What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to the first 2025 regular season edition of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin, presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. And that is One Pie Pizza. Find the online menu in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. I'm your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. Find me on Blue Sky at proant. No underscores there, just PROANT in this Week 1 2025 regular season edition of Disguise Coverage. We will be getting into the matchups that will decide the Buffalo Bills versus Baltimore Ravens Sunday night primetime opener for the primetime schedule, I should say, in the regular season of the NFL this year. A matchup that I think not even just Bills and Ravens fans have had circled, NFL fans across the board, the game of the week in the league. It's developed into a bit of a rivalry between the fan bases and the players. The Bills have ended the Ravens season multiple times in the playoffs over the past several years. The Ravens kicked the Bills' teeth in the regular season last year. You've got Lamar versus Allen and how that has ignited and sparked the rivalry even further and, fanned the flames between these two teams and fan bases. So there's a lot of fun things to talk about, and that's without even getting into the schematics and the details and the bones and the structure of what this matchup really can be on both sides in this game. And that is what we're going to talk about on this show. And I say we because I am not alone. I am joined, as is tradition for Bills versus Ravens, I am joined by Mr. Spencer Schultz, host of the Exit 52 podcast. Spence, I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for joining me for, I think, is your fourth or fifth appearance spanning over several years. I appreciate you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ant. Good to be here. Yeah, we've done this a few times. These two teams just can't stop playing each other. They just have become a marquee matchup and have some fun playoff history. And it's been quite a few times. So pumped to be here, man. Talk some football, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. And it started out as this is cool. Let's talk ball. And now I think it's gotten to the point we were talking a little bit offline, just the intensity that this rivalry kind of has. And for each fan base on both sides, I think it started a couple years ago with the whole MVP discussion, and then continued last year with the MVP discussion. For you, let's take off our fan hats completely. Or I'm sorry, let's take off our analyst hats completely. Forget about scheme, structure, all that stuff. Purely from a fan perspective, where is this rivalry for you? How do you feel about Bills Ravens? Has it creeped up? Is it purely just fun and, your football mind takes over purely for it? Or is there some kind of you know what? I think I hate the Bills, or I'm starting to hate the Bills. Is that starting to creep in a little bit for you, or no?
I think there's some you've been in my way, and especially the Bills have done it in the playoffs against the Ravens. So the Ravens can't just look and say, oh, we lost to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. The Bills have bounced them in Buffalo twice. So I think there's some of that. I think that the teams probably feel that way. They just keep playing. So I think they, keep getting frustrated at one another. The Ravens have won a couple. The Bills have won some, probably the more important ones there. So I do think more so just fan perspective, we will simply look back at two really good teams. I personally think both of them will win a Lombardi trophy in this era of football. So I think we're going to look back on this years from now as, wow, it was Mahomes, it was Allen, it was Burrow, it was Jackson, it was the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bills. And how cool was it that there were these teams that just won 65, 70% of games and just kept going at it and kept going at it. And I think the consistency from really those three, I'll say the Chiefs, of course, the Bills and the Ravens, has been remarkable. And if not for the Chiefs, I mean, the Bills and Ravens, might have quite a few AFC championships, quite a few Super Bowl appearances, and probably a couple Super Bowl rings. So I think we look back at the era of football. I think these two teams have become tethered together. And I don't think it's a little different. They're both really good all the time. And I think rivalry, when I think of true rivalry, I think of a team that kind of was awful and got in the other one's way, but it's never that. So there's been some interesting dynamics across the board. And I think that because of that, it's not, vitriol necessarily, but of course, Allen, Allen Jackson, Allen Jackson, all those things have been just slammed through our brain by ESPN, by First Take, by all of those. So I think there is some kind of just fans are tired of it, I think, a little bit on both ends. I think it's grown weary and grown boring in that sense, but when they play, it's absolutely electric.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. It's funny as you were speaking there, I was thinking, we've talked offline about this, and I've said it on the show before, like Ed Reed is one of, if not my favorite player of all time. And, the Ravens were a nice respite for me when the Bills were terrible in the drought. By like week 6 and the Bills were done, I'd be like, you know what? Okay, I can root for the Ravens. And I spent so much of my childhood just hating the Pittsburgh Steelers with every fiber of my being. And I look back on it now of like the Reed versus Palomalu discussion, and like just, you don't see safety play like that anymore. You don't see defense like that anymore, and how cool that rivalry was and how cool those games were. And, kind of similar to even Bills Ravens to a degree, like the Ravens would get them in the regular season, but Pittsburgh was always in the way in the playoffs. But then I remember the one year when the Ravens finally got them with the Steve Smith year, and I was just so, it's so cool to kind of be in it within the moment. But I do think like the emotional side takes you out of it a little bit. And then when you look back on it years from now, it's like, man, like that was just really good football and that was a good time. But when you're like in the moment, and I understand it for some fans, like, and maybe it is tied to like, youth and having more energy or passion for that, I guess. Like, yeah, it's easy to get lost in. And I think back to those times, man. I hated Ben, and I hated Brown, and I hated Emmanuel Sanders and Mike Wallace and Le'Veon Bell and their whole offensive line. And I hated Brett Kiesel and Casey Hampton. Like, I just spent so much time hating the Steelers because of what they did every year. And it's funny to kind of be on the opposite side now a bit with the Bills. And then we can still bond over the Chiefs being terrible and annoying the hell out of us every year. Yeah, it's fun mix. Speaking of fun mix, what Spencer and I are going to do in this episode, as we do here on the in-season episodes of Disguise Coverage, we're going to focus on the top 3 matchups that will decide, or that we think will decide, Bills versus Ravens. It could be very granular. It could be a specific player or a specific situation, element. It could be large scale, like one entire side of the ball versus the other, anything and everything in between, from as large and wide scale of a net as possible, all the way down to as granular and as niche of a possible answer. For those of you joining us live and playing from home, feel free to put your answers into the chat. Let us know what you're watching for, who you're watching for, what you think will decide the game and why, what you think of our picks and our choices. Feel free to do all of that stuff. Spence, you are the guest, and I want to make sure that I get you out on time, so you will go first. I don't know if you have them ranked. If you do, that's cool. Feel free to go in whatever order you want, or if they're all just equal, that's cool too. Feel free to lead off with your first matchup that you think will decide Bills versus Ravens in week 1.
Yeah, I thought about getting a little more freaky with this one and maybe a little more existential, but I am going to rank. And in my ranking, I think we've seen the Ravens beat the Bills in one way, and when the Bills can handle this matchup, I think they win. And I think it's the Ravens pass rush against the Bills, really consistent 5. And the ability for the Bills at times to keep it at 5 and make it. You have to bring pressure if you want to pressure Josh, and Josh is good against pressure, and especially when you start to add 5 and 6. So to me, I look at where have these teams added, and for the Ravens, they've added to their pass rush. They drafted Mike Green. They continue to bring back Kyle Van Noy. They have really emphasized development of guys like Tavius Robinson, Adafe Owe, and they want Travis Jones to step up into a bigger role. So I think that they have added to their coaching staff. They've added Mike Green, who could be an impact pass rusher, could be someone that could maybe sort of almost actually tackle Josh Allen and bring him down when he's moving a little bit from what we've seen of him in pursuit and his kind of size and skill set and things like that. So I look at a Ravens team that couldn't touch Josh Allen in the slippery field in Highmark to save their life. And he was calm, cool, collected, and delivered a win. Marched down the field a couple times, took a big lead, made the Ravens have to press. The Ravens don't press well in January on the road. They got, close, but just got behind the 8 ball in that regard. So I think simply, can the Ravens hit on Josh Allen and pull on Josh Allen and disrupt him enough? And he's a cool customer at this point. Like him and Lamar, they don't care. They don't care. It's not like Jared Goff out there. You can't rattle them very easily. But to me, if the Ravens can't get pressure to some extent against Spencer Brown Deion Dawkins and that nice consistent 3 in the middle there, then I think the Bills will coast unless the Ravens can put up a remarkable performance. And, the Ravens picked on we'll talk a little more about other things, but the Ravens kind of took it to the Bills in Baltimore, but they were missing some guys. And they've got those guys, and they added Joey Bosa. So I think it might be a little bit tough for the Ravens to really have a true shot at taking a notable lead, getting the Bills to press, all of those things, if they can't get pressure with their combinations of pass rush. And I look at Odafe Owe, Nnamdi Madubuike, Travis Jones, Kyle Van Noy, Mike Green, Tavius Robinson, David Ajabo, Broderick Washington as a really good group, like a premier group in the league. And the Ravens haven't really had this kind of depth of true dudes as rushers. So I look at that matchup as one that I think is most important in this game.
Oh, it's a good way to lead off. You hit on so many. It's funny. I've been doing like this type of like theme for the in-season show for so many years. And I always struggle with like trying to rank my answers because there's like so many things that I think are cool and I think will matter in some form or fashion, like large scale, granular, whatever. And you hit on so many good points. Like the Ravens front is just so deep. And you like obviously highlighted by, Madubuike, who is an all-pro and is phenomenal. And then you have the ascension of Travis Jones, but even down, you mentioned a bunch, everybody across the front. I came away from that Bills-Ravens game last year in the playoffs going, you know what, like Tavius Robinson is kind of sweet. And then I watched some Tavius Robinson tape like in the offseason. And then you mentioned like everything they've done, like Owe's, development over the years, kind of in tandem with Greg Rousseau's a little bit more from a pass rush perspective, what they have overall, really good front. And in the first matchup, as you alluded to, that game script worked perfect for them. And they were winning individually, especially when it got to third down. You had Ravens rushers winning individually, but then Orr was getting creative with what they were bringing Sims and creepers. They were dropping 8. They were dropping Madubuike as like a low hole player. They were dropping 2 defensive tackles at a time. Like they were getting really creative and into their bag. And it was because the game script favored them. The Bills got away from their run game. They were in 3rd and longs, and the Ravens rushers and pressure packages were just teeing off and going left and right. They were confusing and gaming up the Bills' protections. They had free runners come in. And then on top of that, what I think is, this is kind of, it ties in a bit to one of the ones that I was going to make, but I didn't end up making it my official 3. The Ravens' athleticism on the back end was a real problem for the Bills wide receivers. You've got this combination at corner, especially when everyone's healthy. But even last year, Jair Alexander obviously not there like he is this year potentially. But you having like Wiggins and Humphrey, Stevens got picked on a bit, but you had this athleticism at corner that gave the Ravens the ability to like go single high, stack the box to mitigate the Bills run game, and then say like, we dare you to find someone on the outside that can beat our guys. And the Bills at that time didn't have anyone that could do it. Keon did it a little bit in the second half of the game, but it was on this, similar kind of those cowboy routes, back shoulder throws where he beat Stevens a little here or there. I think, and so this ties into my first one, game script matters so much in this game. Because if the Bills get behind the 8 ball, the Bills get away from their run game, which then favors into what the Ravens want to do defensively and what they can do defensively. And then on the opposite side, game script matters so much to the Bills defense because game script was arguably, and I don't say this, hyperbolically, game script was arguably the Bills' best way that they stopped the run last year. Their recipe was create some turnovers or negative plays, which they were very good at as a defense. They have been the last 5 years. Then score some points on offense, which again, they were very good at last year. And then their opponents would be forced to abandon the run. If opponents were able to keep the game close and stick with the run, they found success against the Bills defense. And if that happened, the way the Bills had to stop the run was gapping out and bringing that safety down and constantly having numbers. And if you have to stack the box, just in general for the Bills, then you're looking at one-on-ones on the outside, and then your post-safety single high is either going to be Cole Bishop or Taylor Rapp, and neither of those dudes are built to be an effective single high safety right now at this stage from a coverage standpoint. And then you also open yourself up to be more predictable versus an offense like the Ravens that's lethal in the air and on the ground schematically and physically. There's just so many numbers and stats for this Bills defense last year that pointed towards how important turnovers were for them, how important negative plays were for them. And if they didn't create those, it was relatively easy to sustain drives, move the ball against them, especially from a run aspect. And so my first one, again, ties into a bit of some of the points you mentioned with yours. Game script, I think, is the biggest one because you've got two good teams. And if they can stay close, obviously, they can battle because they're two of the best teams in the league. But they each have game scripts that favor them so severely where if you get behind the 8 ball a little bit versus either one of them, it can like almost put you in the earth, like in the middle of the second quarter. If you get behind that 8 ball too much and that game script is done quickly and that pendulum swings too far to the side, it's almost like curtains against either of these teams based on how they're built on each side of the ball and based on how they succeed and how you would want to attack them and mitigate their strengths on each side.
Certainly. And so much of what the Bills did well against the Ravens in the last game they played, well, the Ravens at least, was success on first and second down and moving the line of scrimmage on first and second down. And to your point, it just prevented any desperation. And the Ravens ended up finding themselves in a lot of those second and medium, third and long scenarios, and they turned the ball over. And it just really, when you're playing these really good quarterbacks, if you can be the one to stay on script and you can be the one to stay ahead of downs and you can be the one to elevate around the quarterback and take some pressure off and not put Josh Allen in a situation where he's getting hit a lot, not put Lamar Jackson in a situation where he feels like he needs to carry and maybe forces a throw or maybe gets loose with the football, then you are probably going to win. You're probably going to win the turnover battle. And when you play these really good quarterbacks, you can't turn the ball over against them. So I think those higher leverage downs come as a result of game script. If you can stay ahead of schedule, then you're less likely to turn the football over. You're more likely to stay calm. And the calmer team always wins in these Burrow, Allen, Mahomes, Jackson, AFC battles. It's the calmer team, the team that stays ahead of schedule and, maybe makes one or two spectacular plays to cap a game or has that one drive or that one defining moment. So I love that point a ton.
Yeah, very fair. And I think it, kind of put a little bow on that. I think what's interesting too, and it ties into something I mentioned in that point as well. Like if you get behind the 8 ball or behind the sticks, I should say, from a down and distance perspective, the Ravens, they can get creative schematically with what they do from how they're going to attack you. Are they bringing a sim? Is it a creeper? Is it a fire zone pressure? Like what's coming where? I wanted more of that for the Bills. And when the Bills get you into third and long, they were arguably the worst defense in the NFL last year. And they don't have a lot of schematic creativity. And there's more disconnect between the coverage and the pass rush. And that's also a nice little piece too. I wonder that aspect of, like you mentioned, winning on early downs and winning situationally. The Ravens have shown a better propensity for taking advantage of that against offenses than the Bills defense did. And this year, I think it's so important. They added Michael Hoyt. He's suspended for this game, and we'll see what he looks like coming back in week 6. But they've added a lot of body types up front that I think should give them more schematic potential or creative potential, I should say. And they brought in Ryan Nielsen, who's very adept at 5-man rushes and drawing those up and diagramming those. So I wonder if the Bills if they can win on early downs and force the Ravens into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, is it still what we've always seen from the Bills where it's like, hey, we're just rushing forward and we're playing coverage behind it? Or do they start to throw more curveballs and change ups and mix it up a little bit? Oh, there's so many things to talk about in this game. I feel like you could do a 15-hour episode on it with all the fun things. All right, Spence, what do you got for your second matchup that you think will decide Bills versus Ravens?
I've been on the show a few times. I don't typically, this isn't a hard one, but can I cuss?
Sure.
I want to call it Who's My Bitch?
Okay.
And it's something we say on my show. Check out Exit 52 podcast if you want. But
very good show. You won an award recently as well.
We did. Best of Baltimore Magazine's best local podcast there. We were very happy. We've been doing our show a good bit. And like you guys were just sickos for the X's and O's. And that's not always the hottest topic in today's talking head world. But we were really excited to win. So it was fun. Yeah. But segment, it's not even a segment. It's just a thought. Who's my bitch? I look at these two rosters. There's not a lot of holes looking around. Safety play with Rapp and Bishop on the back end is consistent for the Bills. I kind of look there. I mean, Benford is nothing to sneeze at. Trey White, the Ravens know, is a physical player. He played well for the Ravens last year, had that kind of controversial DPI.
I still don't think, I said it during the game and I'm saying it now, I don't think it was pass interference on him against the Bills in the divisional round, but to each their own who think it was.
Exactly. It was just one of those instances. It is what it is, and you gotta play football, whatever the results are, and figure it out. So that certainly was an example that Trey White's not just getting burnt. And we see Hard Knocks and see all those things. He looked outstanding. He looked fantastic. It looked like, with their first round pick not being able to have a full camp and that injury, he's got a shot to kind of rekindle some fire that he felt early on in his, not even early on, through the first portion of his career. So I'm looking there, like, really, I mean, offensively for the Bills, they're returning what they're returning. They have a good run game. Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, I've always loved. He's been one of my little guys that I just can't give up on from the draft process. I loved him so much. So I look at the offense, there's no one there. And I look at the defense and it's like, linebackers are good. The corners are solid. The front is good. You add Joey Bosa to the mix. AJ Epinesa, someone that I've always been in love with. I think I've gushed about him on this show 15 times. He's one of my guys I'll never give up on. I think what McDermott's done with him is disgusting and made him be a skinny boy when he's a fat boy. We've talked about it, but it's really, what am I going to do? Pick on Trey White? But it's the Bills know they're probably going to try to attack Trey White. And to me, the Ravens probably know that the Bills are going to attack Daniel Faalele. And then I look around the rest of the roster and who's my bitch? I don't really see one. And you can help those guys. You can help your right guard and you can help one side corner with your smart safeties. So I don't really see it, which to me lends to a balanced football game that will require being spectacular. And I would say, I guess, other than the Ravens defense, it's like, I know I'm kind of shotgunning around some matchups, but it's like you mentioned all the athletes they have on the back end. You pick on probably the weak side linebacker, if it's Trenton Simpson, if it's one of the rookies they trot out. But again, that's kind of the only spot. So you can kind of start to bait that and help that. And we'll see. I mean, Malachi Starks is a rookie. He's going to be starting. I'll attack him. But teams tried to attack him at Georgia when he was an 18-year-old true freshman. That didn't turn out well. And now he's a true freshman in the NFL. And I don't know, we'll see what happens. He hasn't played a snap yet of real football, so to speak, in the NFL. So it's who's my bitch? There's like not really any on either team. And I think that makes it tough I think it makes for good football viewing because it means that they have to call plays on both sides of the football. You need to scheme. You need to be creative. You need to be deceptive. You need to be on your P's and Q's. And I don't think there's any overpowering factor on either team. I mean, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are going to be the two best players that play football on Sunday night, but that's no surprise. And there's two good defenses, two good offenses around both of them. And I don't know. Who's my bitch? There is none, to be respectful.
To be respectful. I like that. The initial who's my bitch, but to be respectful. Yeah, I like a label it on the end. That's a good point. The corner 2 matchup for the Bills, I think is so interesting, especially with Trey going down in camp or like preseason time, I should say. Like, how healthy is he? Does he start? What does he look like when he starts? If it's not him, who is it? Do they get attacked in the air? I alluded to it in kind of my first piece. If you're having issues stopping the Ravens run game, you got to go single high, which means I don't care if it's cover 1 or cover 3, you're essentially one-on-one on the outside. You've got Christian Benford on one side, who is a tremendous corner. So whoever CB2 is going to get attacked. So is it a maybe not 100% Trey White? That has pros and cons. Is it Jamarcus Ingram? Is it Dane Jackson? Is it Dorian Strong? I personally hope, if Trey can't go, I hope it's Jamarcus Ingram because of how he plays the run. And I just know, okay, I've got him on one side and Benford on the other. Nothing's getting outside. You've got good tacklers and good force players at corner. I'm happy with that. Granted, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson have shown other things, and the rest of the running backs who are all sweet. But yeah, that's a fair point. Like, there's not, and even like the deficiencies on each roster aren't like magnified holes. It's not like, oh, well, that spot is terrible.
It's that there's like the 32nd best player at their position there, or like, if it's the guards, it's like Faalele for the Ravens. Like, he might be the 40th best guard in the NFL. Like, he's an average player. He's fine. He's a warm body, not as a negative comment, but he's fine. Like, they're fine. There's no glaring hole on either opening day roster to me.
Yeah. And or depth Yeah, I know what you meant. That's what's so, I think, like, tough because it's not, well, you gotta pick that guy. It's more like, well, you think you'd want to attack there because other areas are so strong because nobody has all pros everywhere. But yeah, who can kind of attack that spot more? But then to your point, you can buttress that and band-aid that a bit on either side of the ball, but then at what cost? Ooh, I like that one. I like that one a lot. And that ties into that makes me not sure with what answer. No, I'm gonna stay in order of what I'm gonna go on. I'm not gonna flip mine. This one is very simple for me and straightforward. I alluded to it a little. It's tied into my first point a little bit. It really comes down to the run game. I literally titled it the run game. Who wins it and how? That's it. Specifically, and I put out this tweet earlier today because I thought the numbers would back it up, and they did. The Bills and Ravens gap scheme run rankings from 2024. So this is duo, this is power, this is counter, this is pin and pull, this is everything with the Bills tackle pull stuff, dart and long trap, all that kind of stuff, all the gap run stuff. The Bills, I'll just go back and forth between Bills, Ravens. The Bills, 237 attempts, fourth. The Ravens, 228, sixth. The Bills, EPA per rush, they were third. The Ravens, EPA per rush, they were sixth. The Bills' success rate, 64.1%, was 25th. The Ravens' success rate, 2.6 percentage points higher at 66.7, 11th. Yards before contact per rush, the Bills were 10th at 1.5. The Ravens were third at 2.0, so a half yard more yards before contact. And then after contact, I didn't even pull that because the Ravens have Derrick Henry and the Bills do not. So yards after contact are almost a guaranteed thing if you're the Ravens. But the Bills run game, I love it. It's diverse between what you can get between their gap stuff. They have multiple concepts within a gap scheme world they can get to. They have multiple zone concepts as well, but they really lean on, between both worlds, duo, mid-zone weak, and then all the tackle pull stuff, dart and long trap. And they're very good at making multiple concepts like duo, or at least they were last year. They're very good at making multiple concepts, specifically duo and mid-zone weak, present in the same fashion pre-snap. I'm talking body types, personnel grouping, alignment, and you are staring down the barrel and you don't know if they're going tight end side and running duo or if they're going mid-zone weak. And then you have to have your numbers balanced accordingly, because if not, they'll displace you, or they can displace you regardless. James Cook has become a very good gap runner in terms of setting up his blocks and timing things out with his track, as opposed to just being the zone runner that he was at Georgia. So their run game is a problem, and it's tied to having a really good offensive line and consistent group. And then the Ravens run game, not to broad brush it too much, but the Ravens run game is a unicorn. You've got a physical offensive line that's capable. You've got capable tight ends. You've got Lamar Jackson. You've got Derrick Henry. You've got multiple backs behind Derrick Henry that are useful. Both teams have a strong identity in the run game, and the run game being tied to the foundations of their offense and their quarterbacks. And you have to control that if you're the opposing defense. Like, not to say Allen can't throw or Lamar can't throw, because they both are very good at that, but you can't let them live in both worlds. So you got to either stop the pass or stop the run. You can't let Lamar be a dual threat. You can't let Allen be a dual threat, but that's easier said than done. And then you add the rest of the non-QB run pieces on top of it. I just feel like everything starts here with the run game aspect and who can stop it, and not even stop it, because I don't think you can stop either. Actually, let me rephrase. Who can mitigate the other's run game more, and what resources does it cost? Like for the Bills last year, again, they could stop the run by gapping out, and then the Rams showed everybody, cool, if you gap out, we're going to murder you in the pass game, especially on the outside. And the Ravens can do that a little bit too, and the play action game is even deadlier. So I really feel like, it starts with the run. Who wins it, how, who can mitigate the other, and what resources does it cost?
Definitely. I think Zay Flowers is a big loss for the Ravens, who was such a dynamic player in those flat areas on those quick throws. And then
missed the playoff game too, which was a huge miss as well.
Definitely. So I think that ties into your point very much so, relative to stopping the run on that side of the football. And again, you talked about, it ties to your point earlier. How do you stay out of bad situations? You stay ahead of schedule. How do you stay ahead of schedule? You do well running the football on first, second down, and then you're not in third downs. And the Bills just ran for 4 yards, 3 yards. The Ravens weren't able to force negative plays in the run game. The Bills ran the ball well. The big back out of Kentucky there had a couple rumbles. Ty Johnson, one of my favorite players in the NFL, one of my favorite role players of all time, had a couple nice plays and always will in all aspects of football that he is entered on, whether it's special teams, pass game, blocking, run game. But yeah, it's a tall task. And we got Roy Collins here, Henry over 120 rushing yards. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to stop James Cook with the threat of Josh Allen. It's tough to stop Derrick Henry with the threat of Lamar Jackson. And these offensive lines are returning a lot of starters.
Yeah.
And the tight ends can block. And we'll see about Pat Ricard. He hasn't practiced in a while. I think they might just be resting the big fella. The battering ran him up for a while. But
I love everything with Ricard for years. Just such a, what do you do against like those personnel groupings and that look? Like it's just it's a unicorn. Their offense, just individually and schematically.
Certainly. I mean, likely probably going to miss this game. We'll see, but another one. So all of those are huge contributors to staying ahead of schedule, which was, I thought, such a good point that you made earlier. For my last one, I'm probably going to look at, I'll put it, to me, two players will win this game, one for each side. To me, I'm going to look at Rashod Bateman and Keon Coleman. And I love Khalil Shakir. I think Zay Flowers is a jitterbug, lightning bug. But I feel like those two players that play on the ball, that will get one-on-one opportunities, that have had success. Keon Coleman made some plays against the Ravens last year. Bateman made some plays, especially in Buffalo in that divisional round matchup. I think that forcing a long PI, being able to work into the blind spot of, a single high coverage when they're anticipating run on play action for Rashod Bateman. I love Taylor Rapp very much. I think he's a stud of a safety. Hamlin's, not a slouch mentally. Cole Bishop did some really nice things last year. I expect him to improve a ton this year and just be more comfortable in year two. Year two for Cole Bishop?
Yes, year two for Cole Bishop.
Yes, year two for Cole Bishop. So I expect those guys to be smart, but Rashod Bateman can run by those guys if they're even. There's those, none of those guys are maybe the rangiest dudes on earth. Bishop a little more than the other two probably, but
but he doesn't have the processing yet to like read the game from that depth and play with anticipation and break on the ball and be in the right position. Rapp does, but he doesn't have the athleticism, the range, which is why they're single high. Whoever plays in the post, it's a bit wonky.
Certainly. And they're going to run some middle of the field close coverage. They always do a little bit. Every team does. And can Rashod Bateman take advantage? We'll see. I mean, the Ravens might come into this game with Nate Wiggins on. They said Nate Wiggins might follow for the first time. They don't do that. The Ravens they've been side corners. They typically stick their starter. If they really like a corner, they put you on left corner and you stay there the entire season. You don't move ton unless there's, some 4x1 stuff, maybe a little bit of like elongated trips. Certain looks might force the hand of that, but at any given point, you can find someone getting 97% of snaps on one side of the field. So Nate Wiggins might follow a little more this year. They could be deceptive with that, but I do believe the Ravens want to put Marlon Humphrey in the slot. I do believe that they are going to trot out Chidobe Awuzie as their starting corner on the other side of Wiggins. Wiggins is probably going to play left corner. I think Awuzie will play on the other side. Awuzie has been a successful player in his career. He has earned some contracts, and he's been very nice. He was never maybe the peak of a Trey White, but I kind of look at them as guys that are vets. They've been banged up, and they still have some good, smart football in them. So I'm sticking Keon Coleman over there, and he's had an awesome camp by all means. All the reports, I thought he was an awesome player. He reminds me of George Pickens in some ways, with probably a little less screws loose, which maybe doesn't have him quite as explosive all the time in both, personality and on the field. But I love Keon Coleman. Loved him coming out of Florida State. A very young player that transferred and spent time at different schools. And it was a big jump to the NFL, it felt like for me, from what the offenses were he was in. So I understand all of the reports coming out being so great on him, because I think he's going to be great. And I don't, it's a toss up to me. Like I love Khalil Shakir to death. He is a big playmaker. He's big after the catch. He does all the little things right. But is anyone surprised if Keon Coleman has, a deep ball category productive season, 60 catches, 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, something like that? Kind of like a big man Jamison Williams kind of stat line from last year? No, absolutely not. So Rashod Bateman, I think, has the matchup. I think Keon Coleman, I'm going to look to and see if I can get him rolling. If you can get Keon Coleman rolling and you can get maybe Chidobe Awuzie, if that's the matchup the Ravens want to put there, on their toes. I think that you talk about dedicating resources in the run game. Well, then maybe the Ravens are dedicating resources in the pass game. Maybe they are staying in a bit more of a shell and trying to disguise and letting the Bills run the ball a bit and hoping to outscore them. So I think those two players, those perimeter wide receivers, have a ton of opportunity to make plays. And we've seen them do it a little bit in this very matchup last year.
Oh, I love that point. This was like a close fourth for me, like this entire conversation. And, starting with it, I am Rashod. I know there's a good amount of people out there. I'm still a Rashod Bateman truther. I believed in him at Minnesota. He just could never stay healthy so far. And it's funny, you and I were talking offline about the first episode that we did here together was when the Bills played in Baltimore in the regular season in the rain several years ago, and the Bills had to come back and won. I always remember Rashod Bateman twisting his ankle and getting hurt in that game as being a significant part of that comeback happening. Like, he was finding space. He was working well. He twists his ankle in the rain. I think he left the game on crutches.
Had a great start to the season. He was looking like a bona fide threat that would have, an $80 million contract right now.
Yeah. I think a week before that or close to it, he had that, like, the slant against Miami for like a 70-something yard house call. Like, he looked very much like the truth. Hurts his ankle in that game. Banged up, I think, missed a good chunk of that year with that ankle injury. And the outside matchups for me are so important because of the run games and then the single high nature associated with that. So of offenses that faced single high coverage last year, and usually if you're seeing, granted, backtrack a minute, cover 3 is still the most widely used coverage in the NFL, although we are in this too high shell revolution or however people want to put it. But no team is predominantly too high. No team is predominantly man. Majority of teams, their highest use coverage is still cover 3, and then they sprinkle in the others at different rates and usages. But that being said, no offense faced more single high coverage or single high snaps last year than the Buffalo Bills. They saw single high rates at 61.8% last year. And the Baltimore Ravens were 5th at 58%. And part of that is tied to their run games, which you're like, we got to account for the run game. So we got to bring a safety down. We got to have 7 and 8 in the box. We got to combat the run. And when that happens, you've got matchups on the outside. And we talked about it a bit from the Bills defense perspective, but the other side, like you mentioned, is one that I'm really interested in. Can Keon Coleman, sorry if you hear it loud, I don't know why I keep getting motorcycles that keep riding by so late all the time now. It's happened like 3 weeks in a row. Can Keon Coleman be that guy who wins on the outside? Like, who wins on the outside for the Bills, and who is it against? That's such a question, not just for this game, but I really think throughout the year. Like you mentioned Shakir. We know what Shakir is in a good way, right? You know where he's going to win, how he's going to win. But the outside, is it Josh Palmer? Is it Keon Coleman? Is it Tyrell Shavers, who everybody loves coming out of the preseason in camp? Maybe it's Elijah Moore. Like, is it a quasi X role for Dalton Kincaid? Like, all of these questions are plausible and actually happening. But I think it all ties to the overall question, which is like, what do the Bills get on the outside? And that's part of what got them in trouble last year in those back-to-back games against Baltimore and Houston. Both teams who have good corners and athletic corners and athleticism on the back end, they both in back-to-back weeks were like, guess what? We're going to play a ton of single high because we don't think you can beat us outside or deep. And the Bills couldn't. Part of the reason they went out to get Amari Cooper, and then he ended up getting banged up and so on and so forth. But that outside matchup, I think, is so interesting because despite the fact that the run game is so good for both teams, if you can just stack the box and play numbers, you can mitigate Baltimore's and Buffalo's run game. And the way to get over that is to beat them on the outside, threaten them a little bit, cause some issues, cause some problems. I really like that piece, especially from the Bills' perspective. Like, I think the Ravens, there's more answers, and it's more just like, oh, can they stay healthy? The Bills, especially for Bills fans, Keon Coleman's a big question mark. You'll get some people who think he's going to be the truth, some people who think he's the worst pick ever, and the Bills should have taken Worthy, and they messed up by doing that, yada, yada. I really like that point. I really like that point a lot. My final point, this is real cut and dry, really simple, not a lot to speak on. I feel like kind of a sellout for going with it, but it's the Baltimore Ravens versus themselves. I think it's somewhat self-explanatory, but the Bills, for the past several years, last 5 years, have been the best team in creating turnovers year over year. Their consistency in an area that you see a lot of ebbs and flows. It is not a consistent thing for teams to constantly create or consistently create turnovers. It usually regresses to the mean at some point, and it has not for the Bills. As a paranoid person, I keep waiting for that to kind of turn, but the worm has not turned at this point. But the Bills create turnovers and negative plays. They do that with regularity. That's how they lived last year as a defense, for better or for worse. And then you have the Ravens. Again, the playoff game against the Bills is a good example. No punts in that game. They were either putting up points or they turned the ball over, or they had some drops, or they had like a fumble. And it's just that I find that happening more in the playoffs for the Ravens, but those big games at the end of the year for them, or even kind of like galaxy braining, out thinking themselves a little bit against Kansas City in the AFC Championship game a couple years ago and not running the ball enough, like that ability in a negative way to either make mistakes or outthink themselves versus the Bills' ability to create havoc and high variance plays for themselves, and which one kind of outweighs the other. Is it neither? And we get consistency from each side. Do the Ravens take care of the football? Do they not outthink themselves? Do they just keep it simple and run it down the Bills' throat and work in play action and play to being better on paper? Or do they outthink themselves a little bit? Do they make mistakes? Do they play into the Bills' hand of playing fast and aggressive and trying to take the ball away and making plays on the ball? And just how all that coalesces into one. I often just, again, I feel like in big games, there's times where it seems like the Ravens beat themselves. And I wonder if we see some of that although it's week 1 and there's so much more to the season, I think both teams want this game, especially the Ravens. And I wonder if it means a little more. And in those games that mean a little more, they tend to kind of press a little bit and shoot themselves in the foot. So yeah, that the Ravens kind of versus themselves and how that plays into who the Bills are, I think is a very big one.
I agree. And overall, I mean, it's something that the Ravens have. It really just overall turned the football over too much in the playoffs and not forced enough turnovers. And last year, even in the regular season, the Ravens only forced 17 turnovers, which is not to the standard of the franchise that's known.
I did not realize that. That's crazy low, especially for like a franchise like the Ravens and how they play.
They finished with a +6 differential in turnovers somehow, while only forcing 17 turnovers. But they also were among the worst in the NFL in terms of penalty yardage. So that ties exactly into your point. I think there's a lot of reasons why the Ravens were sloppy last year and into the playoffs. They had a lot of brain drain on their defensive staff. Their offensive line coach prior to the season unfortunately passed away. They had new starters on the offensive line and then had to find a new offensive line coach during training camp. So a lot of things that led to some sloppiness overall. And because of that, I think that it manifested into the playoffs very much so. They got to play the Steelers in the wild card, who they knew really well and knew how to avoid those hot button items the Steelers like to press with their rush and the way they do things. But then they faced a Bills team that was disciplined and started to press and turn the football over. So absolutely, I think that's a huge part of it. And whoever wins the turnover battle will win this game, I think, frankly.
I'm very excited. I know you're very excited. I appreciate you taking the time to join me. For those watching live, we're going to continue on this show, but Spence was very gracious and joining me tonight, but he's got his show that he has to go do, and I want to make sure he gets out on time. Spence, just in case people don't know who you are, what you do, you have the floor. Tell everybody where they can find you, all your work, because you are tremendous, not just from a Ravens perspective, but from a football knowing, ball knowing perspective. So the floor is yours. Tell the people who you are and what you do.
I appreciate it. Make sure you're giving all the love to the Cover One boys and in here who do an amazing job. You guys have just always been fun and my kind of people. So appreciate you guys always having me on. You can find me at Twitter, Ravens for Dummies. You can find the Exit 52 podcast, Ravens, Orioles, University of Maryland. We do a lot of commentary on officiating and on announcing during games, color commentary. We love to talk about those things too. So you can always like, subscribe, follow for all of those fun things. A lot of film during the season, a lot of nonsense during the off season, but during football season, we get down to brass tacks. So certainly can find me in any of those places. I appreciate you having me on, and hey, have a great season. Hopefully the Bills and Ravens find themselves in the AFC Championship and someone other than the Chiefs can represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, and that would be cool. So
that would be phenomenal. Yeah. And play your role in your award-winning podcast. I appreciate you. Enjoy your night. Maybe we'll see each other here again at some point down the road if these teams continue to dance in the playoffs like they have.
I think that will be the case. Thanks, Dan. Have a great night.
You too.
Enjoy football, everyone.
Yeah, enjoy football later. Mr. Spencer Schultz, very good guest. friend of the show, I was trying to count it with him before we went live. I think it's his fourth time, maybe fifth. I don't remember. Bills and Ravens have played so much. I wanted to go back. Super chat from Jessica. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the super chat. I didn't want to bite into Spence's time because I knew he was on a hard stop. So I essentially, broke my own rule of super chats get priority and pulled up. So I apologize for that, Jessica. Forgive me. But thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chat. I want to get back to this comment. Jessica says the Bills have had all summer to put in a base 4-3 to help handle the size and the running game of the Ravens. Thoughts with Milano and Bernard to cover the tight ends? I'm okay with Milano and Bernard covering the tight ends, especially Bernard. Milano, I'm going to say this with massive fingers crossed and a massive no jinx because you folks all know I'm very superstitious. But Matt Milano, this preseason and in camp, has very much looked like the Matt Milano of old. Like, he looks fast. The trigger is there. The gap shooting, the recognition. He doesn't have a brace on his knee. He doesn't have a brace on his arm. Like, he just looks fast and physical and impactful with everything that he does. And if the Bills get that Milano next to what Terrell Bernard has been, even though Terrell Bernard could still get better, I like what they can do against the run and in coverage, especially with Isaiah Likely probably being out. You're looking at Andrews, who I still think is sweet, and Charlie Kolar is no slouch. They're number 3 tight end, but I think the Bills can hang there. My biggest question with that, if they do have to go with 3 linebackers on the field and do play, a base 4-3 or traditional 4-3, Dorian Williams, what does he look like in coverage? Is it more of an on the line of scrimmage Sam linebacker type of role, or does he get put into run-pass conflict? Does he have to process? Does he have to read? Do they take advantage of him in any way, shape, or form? He's made really nice strides overall as a player in coverage and against the run, but his coverage work is still a work in progress. He still will get lost from time to time. The instincts and the feel for route distributions and concepts still necessarily aren't there for Dorian Williams. But playing the run, I am legitimately very confident in him. His ability to defeat blocks, play to his length, play to his size, play to his speed and burst and quickness, and then being able to read and process the run game. He's become very good at, seeing guys get washed in front of him and naturally kind of exchanging gaps and fitting where they were supposed to be because they've overtaken where he is, on purpose or accidentally because of where they've gotten blocked to. I'm confident in Dorian playing more and against the run, but the coverage aspect is what I worry about a little bit. But as far as just Milano and Bernard, I'm confident in both of them. Really good question. I like that very much. I wanted to go grab I have some other points and some stats that I wanted to get into, but I wanted to get some questions here. Bills fan 7883 says, everyone talks about interchangeable safeties, but no one actually does it. They just say that's the way the NFL is going, but it's actually not. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I think it's more of, because I do think this is largely true across the league. You don't necessarily have the free and the strong safety dynamic like you used to have with the Seahawks, for example. You knew where Earl Thomas was going to be and where Cam Chancellor was going to be. And then even like the Bills, you had kind of a Jarvis Bird type of safety and a Dante Whitner type of safety. I do think a lot of the league has morphed into what the Bills did for a while with Hyde and Poyer, where, Hyde's skill set leaned more towards a center fielder and a coverage standpoint on the back end. And Poyer's skill set leaned more towards him being in the box and playing in and around the line of scrimmage. But both could operate pretty seamlessly in terms of where you use them. Poyer could drop into the post as a single high safety and be fine. Hyde could come down into the box and be fine. They could play as an apex and be fine. They could play as split field safeties in cover 2 or quarters and be fine. I do think a lot of the league has kind of moved into that direction. And you may have, for the Ravens, for example, you've got Malachi Starks and you've got Kyle Hamilton. It probably makes more sense to play Malachi Starks deep if you're going single high and let him rock as that post safety and play Kyle Hamilton as an apex or a big nickel or have him be in and around the box. But Kyle Hamilton can still do that deep role, and Malachi Starks can still do that up in the box type of role and that slot coverage apex type of role. So I do think while teams may lean into certain roles for certain guys, because there usually is some level of, the sliders are turned up in one direction. I do think a lot of the league has moved towards just a safety position where it is more just safety rather than free and strong, even though there are some of those elements that are present. Roy, yeah, this is what I was alluding to a little bit, but fair comment here from Roy, who says single high safety against the Bills last season, in my opinion, was because no one respected our wide receivers. And that's why I love Spence's point, and I kind of brought it with mine as well. You're gonna see a lot of that against the Bills in general, because teams are not going to want to die by the run game. They're going to want to try and stop and gum up the Bills' run game. And as crazy as that may sound, they're going to try and force the Bills to have to pass the hell out of the ball. Teams are going to want the Bills to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. They do not want the Bills leaning on the run game. They're going to continue to get a lot of single high. Whether or not the pass game is good and guys can win or separate on the outside or deep, but it's going to get even worse and be harder if they can't win on the outside and or separate on the outside or win deep. All of that. It's going to compound. Teams are going to get more comfortable walking a safety down or playing man and just straight up, forget it. We're not even playing zone. Let's make it easy. Let's man this thing across the board. We'll have a low hole player or a robber maybe spy Allen a little bit in case Bills go play action or boot or get him on the move and move the pocket a little bit. Yeah, there is a world where the Bills run game gets stymied and gummed up because the receivers aren't up to snuff on the outside. We saw it last year, again, maybe smaller samples, but we saw it against Baltimore. We saw it against Houston. At some point, the Bills wide receivers are going to have to prove their worth and their mettle against good corners and or athletic corners. And it's going to tie into the coverages that defenses play, which is going to tie into the run fits. Yeah, they're going to need, which is, again, why I think Josh Palmer will help a lot, even if he's not the world beater that I think several folks have made him out to be. He can separate in the low and in the underneath and the low intermediate, and that should be fine enough. You just need somebody that can beat guys enough consistently one-on-one. I think Palmer can be that guy, and I think Coleman can be that a little bit as well, albeit from more of a ball-winning, power forward, dunk on you type of game. But that still can work. Like, the Ravens are a good example potentially. Nate Wiggins, really fast, really athletic corner, second-year man out of Clemson, plays physical and plays bigger than his size indicates, but he is more of a leaner, I don't want to say frail at all, but more of a leaner, skinnier type of corner. If you're looking for him to kind of like try and get rebounds with Keon Coleman, you would like to think that Keon Coleman has that advantage. I'll just throw jump balls and let him box him out and use his size and frame to dunk on Wiggins over and over again. So they have the opportunity to kind of create some things this year, potentially. But yes, a lot of single high last year because two things. Teams are crowding the box to stop the Bills' run game, and coincidentally or not, they didn't fear anybody on the outside, kind of giving them some threats. Face of Bear says Palmer is going to shine with Josh. I hope so. I hope so. Mac says, his keys to the game. I like this. I like that you listen to your own. Mac says, keys to the game. 1, who continues to play with the lead and therefore gets to stick to the script. 2, who controls the line of scrimmage. 3, who wins the turnover battle. I think that's very fair. Just the Tippy Canoe says, the like button, people. Yes, please. Thank you. If you have not already, drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams. Please, and thank you. Pete, what up, Pete? Pete says, I hope this game doesn't mean more to the Ravens than to Buffalo. Are we talking about a narrative outside of the team when we say that? Not the locker room, right? No, I mean more of, I actually know, maybe even from a team perspective. I think that it's not necessarily even like the biggest thing or the worst thing. Like when your season ends at the hands of a certain team or a rival, I do think it makes more sense that losing team kind of gets a little more geeked up for that opening game. And it means a little more to them to win that. Now, I don't think that means the Bills don't care, right? Like, but I'm just saying, I think it's possible that the Bills come into this game and this game is a 9 out of 10 for them or a 9.5 out of 10. But for the Ravens, it's a 10 out of 10 or a 9.8 or something like that. So I'm not saying that the Bills are going to come in flat and underperform and they don't care about this game. But I think there is a plausible chance that this game means more to the Ravens because their season ended at the hands of the Bills. I think it's just natural to a little bit be like, yeah, we beat these guys already. We want to win. We know this game's important. It's opening night. We're the home team. It's prime time. The Bills are going to be juiced up for this game. But I do think it's plausible that the Ravens are maybe a little more juiced up. I'm not buying necessarily the whole narrative of the Ravens have had this game penciled. They've been thinking about it all off season. This is what they want more than anything. I don't think it's necessarily to that degree, but I do think it's plausible where there's a world where this game means slightly a bit more on the needle for the Ravens than it does potentially for the Bills. John Roberts says, do you think someone gets called up from the practice squad because of Dwayne Carter's injury, and who? Yes. I feel like it's just going to be, let me go to the Bills. I actually, you know what? I don't want to kind of cop out right now, but I don't know what the full injury report will be. Tomorrow is Wednesday. We get the injury report. I'll have more of an answer then, because is Trey also hurt? Is he also not playing? Like, there's going to be a lot of gamesmanship if Carter is gone, not if. With Carter gone, and if Trey is also unable to go. So I think that creates a little bit of walkiness. But yes, I do think someone gets called up. Oh, man. Charles says the Cardinals do crazy stuff in the back with safeties. The rest of the league, not so much. Yeah, the Cardinals are super creative. I mean, they also play a lot of just like 3 high, 3 safety looks. But yeah, they essentially weaponize Budda Baker, kind of like how what Ohio State does in college football with Caleb Downs, where they'll play 3 safeties, but Downs they'll play like some Tampa 2 invert, where Caleb Downs is that middle Tampa player, that pole runner. But instead of playing it from linebacker and carrying someone deep, he plays it from the top down. You know, it's Tampa 2 Robert or Tampa 2 invert at times they call it. The Cardinals just weaponize Budda Baker. They let him play anywhere and everywhere, and it is awesome. I think that's a large part of why they do that, but it's schematically very, very creative. But I do think there are some teams that spin their safeties more, or they'll run cover 2, and one of the split field safeties is a safety. The other one is their nickel, or is one of their outside corners. But yeah, the Cardinals do a lot of really, really, really fun schematic stuff on the back. And the Cardinals defense was one of my favorite watches last year on tape. I watched them throughout the year and then more in the offseason. And it's one of the units I'm most excited to see about this year, especially with some of the additions they made to their defensive front. I think it really helped them on the back end. They've got some dudes there. We'll see what Will Johnson can be as a rookie. I'm excited. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, Pete says makes sense that way. I like a mean fronter. Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, we'll kind of see. Oh, this is a fair comment from Roy. Roy saying Zion Logue, maybe a call up, might want that true 1-tech against Baltimore. I'd like them to do that. I don't know if they will. I'm just confused in general with what the Bills want from a 1-tech perspective, with the rumors of they were going to take Tyreek Williams at the end of round 1 if he was there, but then they doubled down on what they already had and took TJ Sanders and then took Deion Walker, who I know Deion Walker's huge, but he does not play like a 1-tech. I don't know how much the Bills value the true 1-tech role at this point. Like, because taking Tyreek Williams in the first round would indicate that they value it highly, but then they didn't look to kind of replicate that even in a rotational role through the draft or in free agency. So I don't know at this point. Joey says, do you have any worries that we get some sugar high Allen because he won that MVP and pundits say Lamar should have won? I will always kind of worry about the emergence of sugar high Josh Allen. I don't think from this perspective, though, like not because of the MVP related and tying it into Lamar. I think there is the propensity for Allen to get a little jittery or sugar high-y. That's not proper grammar, but whatever. I do think he still has that in him. Even to start the AFC Championship game, I think the way that game ended this past year, well, still in 2025, but this past season, the ending gets talked about so much, and the lack of James Cook gets talked about so much. But Allen started off not good in that AFC Championship game. He was missing guys. He wasn't hitting his reads. His mechanics weren't great. Like, you could tell he was, I'm not going to say he wasn't rattled or like shook, but, and it wasn't sugar high Josh Allen, but there was some inconsistency to his game when he had largely been even keeled in his approach and in his execution for the heavy majority of the year, excluding games where the game script kind of put their offense out of whack. But yeah, I think there's always a chance you get sugar high or jittery Josh Allen, but I don't think it'll be because like he won the MVP and pundits say Lamar should have won. If anything, I think you might get it on the other side. I think Lamar might try and press a little bit because of the MVP conversation or because they lost to the Bills last year in the playoffs. Lamar is, and I know so many people say this about so many guys, but Lamar is super competitive and he's super hard on himself for all the losses and the poor play that the Ravens have had in the playoffs at times. He's super hard on himself. Like every time they lose, like he calls himself out and is really hard on himself. And I could see him pressing a little bit more than Allen potentially, but we'll see. We will see. Some more comments here. Bills fan 7883 says if the Bills use Bishop in a deep role just to be interchangeable, they will lose games. I don't think they'd use him just to be interchangeable, but you can't just get completely siloed with the roles for guys. That ties into coverage predictability and situational predictability, and then the offense being able to dictate to you more, knowing, okay, if they're not going to drop Bishop deep every time we see him as the down safety, we know he's going to stay down. Or he's going to drop, maybe he drops at the last minute and it's too high. But either way, if I'm the quarterback and I know that they're not dropping Cole Bishop deep, I know that I can key in on Taylor Rapp and be like, okay, either he's going to be the single high safety or it's going to be a split field look. That changes a lot of the kind of the pre to post snap picture change you can have as a defense. And then some of the menu that you can access, some of the menu the offense can access. It just opens you up to be dictated to as a defense. And again, that's part of, I talked about it so much this offseason. That's what scares me a little bit about the Bills safeties this year, is because I don't think either Rapp or Bishop are an ideal post safety, but they're both going to play it. They're both going to play single high. They're both obviously going to play in the two high looks. And that's what gives me pause and some concern with some of this defense. But I was encouraged by some of Bishop's play in the preseason, and I think he's just a dude who needs time on task. I also think this is something where, maybe there are some growing pains and you suffer early on with Bishop while he gets that time on task, but this could be something that pays off towards the end of the season. He's got the athletic profile. The Bills have gotten a lot of blood from the defensive back Stone over the years, and Bishop's got a lot of really fun traits that they could potentially tap into. And I say that as a person who, I didn't love his fit when they drafted him, just based off of what he did at Utah and how he operated and where I think he's best. I've talked about it all offseason on the show. I talked about it in the film breakdown I did last week on Cole Bishop, specifically and solely on him. So I say all that as a guy who didn't love the Bishop fit and pick for the Bills, but I do think with the time on task, that'll help him a lot. Being able to play alongside Taylor Rapp, who's very heady and knows this defense well, should help him. Maybe even Jordan Poyer being back and on the practice squad helps him. I do think, for as much as it's like a worry thing of Bishop's not going to get it, he can't function in that way, it's not going to work. For as much of a possibility as that exists, I do think it's a fair, pretty decent equivalence that the other side of the coin is true, where if he just gets more time on task, he will be good in that role. And it could be something that maybe you struggle through a little bit to start the year, but it pays off come November and December and January and maybe February. Jessica says, was anyone else happy watching Bill Belichick and UNC get smashed yesterday? Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I loved that TCU just poured it on. And by the fourth quarter, Kirk Herbstreit was putting headphones on his dog because that game was just done. Jeff says, Josh and Keon going to have a huge game Sunday night, envisioning 2 touchdowns as a pair. I look for Deion Walker to make a big play early. I feel it. That's fair. Oh, we got to stop because we got a super chat. Just Tippy Canoe says, thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chat. Just Tippy Canoe says, can we just put Michael Hoyt in a wig and different jersey number and sneak him out there? I've thought of that for like high school games and things like that. Like, it's easy to just like kind of sneak someone out there. That's fair. Maybe they could put him in someone else's jersey, see who they get, maybe have him dressed the same way, wear an arm sleeve. You're going to have him wear a visor so they can't tell it's him. You never know. We'll see. But where are we? Arthur, I like this question from what I read quickly. Arthur says, if you had to guess, when do you see the Bills defense breaking out some more creative looks? Week 1 or after the suspension in week 6, or not really at all? I'm very hopeful we see them sprinkled throughout the first quarter or so of the season. My thought is we're really not going to see more of them until Michael Hoyt comes back, because I think he's a big part of the creativity that they can have up front. I think the most creative that they'll get early on, or at least that I'm hoping for, is, we have TJ Sanders lined up on a tackle and Deion Walker is next to him lined up in a 5 technique, like on the outside shoulder of the tackle. Or we've got Rousseau lined up next to Bosa. And then Matt Milano is head up on the center. We've got a 5-0 look in different creative ways. And then some simulated pressures, some creeper pressures. So I'm hoping for some schematic creativity, but I'm expecting really for the full menu to unroll once Michael Hoyt comes back. I don't think they're not going to do it at all. And they can't continue to be what they've been the past several years. They cannot continue to just be hey, you know what coverages you're going to get from us? Hey, yeah, we're just going to do a 4 down over front and rush 4 and play coverage behind it. They can't continue to do that in big moments, in big games against big teams. They need more creativity, and they've done that before. The odd mirror package that I've broken down on the show, we've broken down in the film room, I've showed it on social. That odd mirror package that Georgia has been running at Georgia in college football for years, they busted that out several years ago against the Chiefs, and they've sprinkled it in against different teams at different times. They've shown an ability to press the buttons a little bit and change the dials and tweak some things. So they've recognized when they've needed things in the past, and they need it not on a wholesale level where it's a complete change, but they need more injections of that. And I really do feel like they know that, or they feel that, or at least I hope they know that, and I hope they feel that. So I'm expecting, tweaks and more creativity early on, and then the dials to get turned up even further once Michael Hoyt comes back. And if that doesn't happen, I'm going to be very disappointed. And probably very frustrated because I still don't think they have the horses up front just to rush 4 and play coverage. Like, that's a hard thing to do. That's really like you have the Jimmys and Joes advantage, and I don't think the Bills do as of right now. And again, it's a harder thing to have, and I don't think the Bills have that right now. Bum, bum, bum. I'm pulling this up because it just made me laugh, but RJ's pessimism got me here. RJ says, if anything, our safeties are interchangeable because they both suck in coverage but are both solid in the box. Oh, RJ. Never change. Never change. Never change. Miguel says, sorry, my internet went out and I missed 10 minutes of the show. Who do you think wins on Sunday? Go Bills. I'm far too superstitious to answer this question. I think it's going to be, I don't even want to say, I'm far too superstitious to make any kind of prediction, but I appreciate you being here. Thank you for coming back after your internet went out. Charles, in reference to Michael Hoyt on the field. Yeah, like Bobby Valentine style. Yeah, when he came back with what? The mustache and the glasses for the Mets. Yeah, wearing their black uniforms. Oh, as a Red Sox fan, oh God, those Bobby Valentine years were terrible. Oh. John Roberts says we have to remember Hyde and Poyer had experience when they came to the Bills. Yeah. I think McDermott and company had a strong hand in their trajectory and development, but yeah, they were somewhat seasoned, especially Hyde. And then the pedigree that he came from playing at Iowa and then playing with Green Bay. Poyer was more of the unknown, but yeah, I think that's a fair point. Arthur says, also, how bad did you feel when you say Carter got injured after you said he is the most unproductive player you've ever seen? Yeah, I mean, I feel bad regardless when anybody gets hurt in the NFL. If they're a productive player, if they're not a productive player, I never want anybody to get hurt. I never want anybody to lose their job. It's a tough business. That's why I always advocate for players chasing the bag and the contract whenever they can. It was why I had no problem if, James Cook wanted $15 million a year and you can get it, go get it, bro. Like, you never know. The Carter example is a good example. Didn't get hurt in a game. He got hurt in just practice or working out or whatever. Like, you never know when your next movement, your next snap, your next whatever, you have no idea when that next snap or whatever can be your last or be one that is significantly damaging to the rest of your career and by extension, your livelihood. So yeah, I always feel bad when dudes get hurt. But the reality was I'm not trying to be cold. Like, he was a very ineffective player last year. I hoped for better from him this year. And it sucks that he's not going to get that opportunity. And it sucks that he got, not just something that'll take him out a year, but you're recovering from an Achilles. The first year you come back, you're still not really yourself. So this is really going to be like 2027 is really when we'll be able to see him fully recovered, even if he plays next year. So it just sucks all the way around. I feel for him. Oh, great call, Jeff. Jeff says, can't wait to get the first large pie and 20 wings of the year Sunday night. I'm doing that Sunday day. I'm not going to be able to make it through all of Sunday without getting pizza early on. And, of course, I'm going to be getting one pie pizza. Great comment here from Curtis saying, I'm interested in how much the new D-line coach changes things up. I'm right there with you. Talked about it a little earlier with Spence. Ryan Nielsen, his propensity for 5-man rushes and pressure packages with that and twists and stunts and games and some sims and creepers. I'm hopeful. I am hopeful. I don't think you bring him in and Mike Pellegrino in and Michael Hoyt in and invest in the defensive line and lose the way you have the past several years, all of these breadcrumbs, it's just far too much to think that they're just going to come out and be the same type of schematic defense that they've been the past several years. Like, I just can't see. Let me backtrack. I could see that happening, but it would just be like, come on. Like, how many times are you going to touch the stove and burn your hand before you realize you shouldn't put your hand on the stove? Like, that's kind of where we're at right now. And if they don't tweak or lean into it a bit, and if all these breadcrumbs are all for naught, I'm going to lose my mind. And it takes a lot for me to lose my mind. I would be frustrated. RJ says, not going to lie, I kind of just wanted that reaction from you. And well played, RJ. You got me. I do think both Rapp and Bishop do have issues in coverage, though. Rapp due to physical ability, Bishop due to mental process. Absolutely. I echoed that in the film breakdown I did of Bishop last week and throughout this offseason. I mean, I mentioned earlier with Spence. Bishop has the range, although I don't think he plays as fast and as athletically as his testing times indicate. But, he has more of the range and athleticism for those coverage, roles. But he doesn't have the processing and seeing the game from depth at that level yet. Rapp, on the other hand, does have the mental side. He can process. He can see the game that way, but he doesn't have the athleticism or the range or the foot speed. So, yeah, it's just wonky. The overlap between the two versus what they could have. Yeah, and then both are good in the box. Both are good playing the run. Both are good triggering and shooting gaps. Both are good as kind of almost a big nickel apex. Bishop is better because the athleticism allows him to cover up, in man against tight ends and running backs. But I mean, Taylor Rapp won a Super Bowl with the Rams as the big nickel. They moved him from being a starting safety to the big nickel on third down packages, or almost like a dime linebacker, I should say. And he had reps in the Super Bowl where he's covering down on Jamar Chase, and he's doing well in the high underneath and low intermediate. Like, it's just weird how they built this safety room, especially after all the years of having interchangeability between Hyde and Poyer deep and in the box. And now where they are now, it's just weird where they've leaned into, and kind of frustrating, especially for me. Like, I'm a coverage guy. I'm a defense guy. I love DB play. And it's just a little frustrating and a little odd at the same time, but we'll see what the time on task yields. Arthur says, any thoughts on Jabril Peppers? I don't think he fits. I would take him over DeMar Hamlin because I think the versatility is nice in his game, but I think they like DeMar and he's not going anywhere. And then if I'm adding a safety, it needs to be somebody who has range and who can play more of the ball hawk coverage type of role. And I don't think that's Jabril Peppers. He's more in the Cole Bishop type of role and more in the Taylor Rapp type of mold. He's another down safety, box safety, apex type of dude. And I don't think they need that as much as they do more of a rangy ball hawk type of dude on the back end who can play more of that post safety and or even just in quarters looks and reads and stuff like that. I wouldn't mind the addition if it meant somebody else was going out, but as far as plug him in and have him be the starter, I'm not there with that yet. More just because it's a little redundant with what they already have. You know what's not redundant? The best pizza in Buffalo, New York. One Pie Pizza. Jeff had the comment earlier. He said he can't wait for that first large pie and 20 wings on Sunday night for Bills versus Ravens. One Pie Pizza would be the best pizza for you to have this opening week, whether it's Thursday night for the opening night regular season game. I think it's Thursday night. We got Eagles, Cowboys. Friday, we've got Chargers and Chiefs. So whether you're getting pizza Thursday night, whether you're getting it Friday night, whether it's Saturday, whether it's Sunday, whether it's for the Bills, whether it's for not, the best pizza in Buffalo, New York resides at One Pie Pizza. Sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, a great cheese to sauce ratio. They chop up veggies and whatever toppings you get, sprinkle them evenly across the pie. They have a pizza named after this show and the Cover One brand. They make their own homemade blue cheese, and it absolutely slaps. They have really good salads as well. They also have a catering division where they just make a ton of great different types of dishes and food. So if you got an office event or a birthday or any kind of party, their catering division can knock it out of the park for you. The online menu for their catering division and for One Pie Pizza as just the pizza aspect can both be found in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. They make amazing food and they do a lot of good for the community. I talk about it every week, and I say that I talk about it every week. partnering with the SPCA, partnering with the Alzheimer's Foundation, partnering with Roswell to try to knock out cancer, Toys for Tots. I always mention those four, but they do even more than that. They're just really good people trying to make a difference in the community and the city of Buffalo, and then also providing everybody with tremendous pizza and food on top of that. So if you live in the Buffalo area, or if you're coming up for the game, get yourself some One Pie Pizza. You will not be disappointed in any shape, form, or fashion. Get yourself some One Pie Pizza. And Steven has a quick question. Steven says, I'd love to hear you do a breakdown as to why Carter is so bad. We've done it in the film room, and I've talked about it here. Essentially, he was very ineffective as a pass rusher and also ineffective as a run defender as well. Getting blown off the ball by double teams, getting sealed and moved against individual base blocks, not being able to hold his gap. And then from a pass rushing standpoint, not a lot of penetration, not a lot of moves, being stalemated and stalled at the line. Just really ineffective overall. The tape shows it. The metrics showed it. And I think and I talked about this, I think a couple weeks ago. I think what's unfortunate for Carter is he was more of a pure 3-tech at Duke and played a little lighter, and they just let him penetrate and attack and get upfield. The run defense struggles were there. You'd see him struggle against double teams and, get displaced. But he had more pass rush juice because he played lighter. The Bills had him play heavier and also had Austin Johnson drop weight last year. So almost instead of having Johnson play more of a 1-tech role like he had at previous stops and having Carter play as more of the 3 like he did at Duke, they had both of them try to be able to play 3-tech and 1-tech. And I think that hurt Carter a lot, just with him having to play a role that wasn't really suited to his play style and his experience at 1-tech, and then having to do that in the NFL and then having to rotate so heavily. So I don't think he was necessarily set up for success with what the Bills wanted from him. And it looked like they were replicating that type of role again this year with the interchangeability, but it's really just kind of the ineffectiveness against both the pass and the run. You're not getting juice. You're not getting by guys and heating up the quarterback on tape or from an advanced metrics perspective. And then against the run, just getting displaced, getting blown off the ball backwards or side to side. He had a couple nice plays against the Texans early on in the year, which that got me hopeful. I was like, okay, maybe he's turning the corner a little bit. We're seeing some more from him, but it just didn't stick. And there were a handful of good plays that he made, but nothing to indicate that he was going to be a mainstay on this roster. And I think even coming into this year, him making the 53, I think he was very much defensive tackle 5 out of the 5 defensive tackles that were there. Maybe he played more as defensive tackle 4 because they wanted to keep Deion Walker fresh and keep him on maybe a pitch count to let him just be a true game wrecker whenever he does get in there. But if Larry Ogunjobi wasn't suspended, I don't think Dwayne Carter would have made the 53, unfortunately for him. But we'll see what happens coming out of his injury. I'm going to throw up the banner that says Toodles, folks, because we're going to start to say goodbye. We can go watch Hard Knocks now if you're not watching already. Before you leave, please, thank you. If you're watching live, drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams. If you're not watching live and you're watching post-live, that's fine. Please still drop a like on this video. Likes, again, are the lifeblood of these streams, and they really do significantly help myself and the entire team to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. So please drop a like if you enjoyed this content. If you are listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Disguise Coverage. Turn on notifications for the Disguise Coverage playlist here on YouTube. Subscribe to the Cover One channel and the multitude of content we will have for you across pretty much every single day of the week now that we are in the regular season. If you enjoyed this episode, tell your family and friends and loved ones about it. If you hated this episode or you hate me or you hate this show, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day or night by making them watch this show. I might be monkeying with the content a little bit for Disguise Coverage this year instead of doing for the regular watchers, listeners of this show, feel free to get at me on social with feedback or in the comments on YouTube. I'm thinking about tweaking the format this year for Disguise Coverage instead of doing kind of the matchup show and preview stuff that, even though I know we do it differently here and we dig into more of the X's and O's and the scheme and structure and combine that with the advanced metrics, I know that's different than a lot of other people and how they approach these matchup shows. I still do think maybe there's a bit too much overlap with the matchup and preview aspects. So I'm thinking about diving into more of, a siloed focus on certain schematic elements, bringing up, charts or graphs or numbers or film, potentially doing pre-recorded episodes and uploading them earlier on a Tuesday or a Monday or something like that. So I'm kicking around some different format options. If there's something that you would like to see, let me know on social. Let me know in the Cover One Discord. Let me know on YouTube. If you want me to stay the course with this format, let me know that as well. Obviously, the feedback from you folks, it matters a ton to what I do. And I also really appreciate, kind of the community we built here on the show and in the live chat and the back and forth that you folks have with one another and, with myself and the questions and the live format. So, and the discussion and engagement that these type of shows generate from the matchup perspective. So I'm weighing a lot of options and thoughts, and I would love any and all feedback from any of you folks. So yeah, appreciate you for joining me on this Tuesday night heading into Bills Ravens. Thank you for the kind words for Spence throughout the show, for myself throughout the show. I appreciate everybody for stopping by, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. Enjoy Hard Knocks. And yeah, I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. I will see you when I see you. I did a film breakdown of Cole Bishop last week, and I also did a season preview with Mina Kimes from ESPN. Both of those are up on the channel. Feel free to check out both of those. And yeah, thank you for the kind words. Go Bills. Drop the like. Thank you for all the stuff. I'm not pulling it up because I feel it's corny to pull up kind stuff for myself when I'm by myself, but I see the nice stuff in the comments and I appreciate it. I will see you folks when I see you. Godspeed. If you're going to the game this weekend, be safe. Have a great time. Godspeed. And as always, go Bills.